Annette and Gary. That'd be much appreciated. Right, so we're excited to have Theresa here. First time preaching, so isn't that great?
Yes.
We'll pray for Theresa. Father, we want to thank you for Theresa, Lord, just being willing to say, Lord, here am I, use me. And Father, we're just so grateful for men and women of God who were just willing to say, God, here am I, use me. And God, we're expectant, we're grateful, and we're just thrilled that Theresa's willing to just come and share with us today what you've placed on her heart. And we're more than confident, and we're with her. And God, thank you, you're for her in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks, Theresa.
Awesome. Right, just get myself organised for one quick second. I hope that'll stay open, all my verses. I've learned from Greg, he highlights stuff, so I thought I should follow the example. And when we were singing this morning about God's a promise keeper, I was just reminded that I grew up in a church where we didn't do prophecy like we do here. We didn't not believe in prophecy, but it was the job of the prophets in the Bible to prophesy. So if they said something, we believed that, but it wasn't generally that people would say stuff. And when I was about 10 years old, I would sit my mum and dad down and I'd preach to them. I'd read them the Bible. And my dad said that one day you were going to preach. And we didn't believe in prophecy, remember that? But here I am, 30 years later, a word that God was spoken over my life. And so sometimes His promises, they don't happen instantly. We have to wait and we have to be patient for them. But it's a testimony that He never fails. His word always comes to fruition. And so I was just pondering the last probably 2 or 3 weeks, if I really believed that God was sovereign and gracious over my life, what would my life look like? Because then I wouldn't panic, I wouldn't fear. And I've done a lot of panicking this last week. Lots of fear filled my life because I think sometimes there's a difference between knowing and truly believing. Like when I was a child, I knew my parents loved me, but I didn't believe it. There was a barrier there for me to really take that to heart, and it got me into trouble. When I needed to go to them because I needed help, I couldn't because I felt like an orphan. Because I didn't really believe their love for me. I knew they loved me because they supplied food and comfort and all of the things that parents do, but there was that something missing in my life. So if I were to really believe God's grace and His sovereignty over my life all the time, that's what I should aim for. And about a month ago, because it was last worship service, I had a sovereign and gracious encounter with the Lord. And it changed my life. I went home. I had to be carried home. I couldn't walk home. It was rather intense. And I spent all night laughing. And even when I fell asleep, I was still just laughing because it was really just amazing. And for about 2 weeks, I was completely wrecked. It was so hard to just live life normally. But see, that is that place where I believed God's sovereignty and grace over my life. And if we can only live like that all the time, it would be amazing. So Greg asked me to just explain a little bit more about that encounter and just kind of elaborate on what happened for me that day. And so to do that, we have to go back in history a wee way ago. So if you could please put up that first photo, Nathaniel, that would be awesome. So there we have it. That's about 40 years ago. And I'm the cute little baby in the picture. And those are my brothers and sisters. Now, the younger brother of the two, he was not impressed because I took his royal position of the baby in the family. So that's why he kind of had the little bit of a frown. But my other brother and sister, they were just thrilled. And it was awesome to be the baby in the family because if mum and dad said no to something, my brother or sister, the older two, would say yes. It took some more time for the younger one to come around because he was not happy with that I stole his spotlight. But when he was a teenager, I could manipulate him because I could tell on him. So he did whatever I asked him to do, or I would tell mum and dad. So, that was the day I was baptized, because the church I went to believed that babies should be baptized. And in the meantime, I've had a greater revelation about baptism, because I think it's a beautiful thing to bring your baby to the Lord and to dedicate their life and to pray that God would help you to raise them, because being a parent now, it's really hard. It's not the easiest thing. So I wouldn't change that, but I think I've had a greater revelation of what baptism really means. Because in Romans, if you could put that verse up, Nathaniel. Romans 6, verse 4 to 11, it says, "Therefore, we are buried with him through baptism into death, that just as Christ was raised from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so we also should walk in newness of life. For if we have been united together in the likeness of his death, certainly we also shall be in the likeness of his resurrection." Now, as a baby, I couldn't really decide that I wanted to die with Jesus and be raised to life with him again. I could only make that decision later in my life. And so when we came to Oxford here, I felt really convicted about not being baptized as an adult. So I was baptized in the river on a really cold, freezing day, and it was amazing. It was so much more fruitful than the first time. Not that the first time was invalid, because I think like my life was dedicated to the Lord, and that helped me to come to that decision to choose him. But there was something more powerful in it as an adult when I could make that decision for myself. So Nathaniel, can we please have the other photo? There's my mum and dad on baptism day, and they were dressed up for the occasion. Now, you have to understand my dad's devotion. This is like I think devotion, I'd say, because this was African heat. I was born in January, and I was probably only about 4 weeks old there, and he's wearing his full suit. But that's how we dressed when we went to church. Women wore hats, like my mother and my sister, and I'm really glad that we had a greater revelation about hats too in the meantime. But I was really blessed growing up in the church, because I can't remember a time in my life where I didn't know that God was real. He was always there for me. And that doesn't mean that my life was perfect, doesn't mean my parents were perfect, and it doesn't mean the church that I grew up in was perfect. We did a lot of things right, but also a lot of things not so right. And my grandparents were both, my grandfathers both liked drinking. So my mum and dad grew up in houses where alcohol was dominant. And it must have been a very hard life for them. So when they got married, they just came with their brokenness, and they didn't really know how to deal with it. So my dad would drink a lot too. And he was an awesome man, a great father. But when alcohol changes a person, it changes what you say and what you do. And that happened for me and my dad. It was like there was a crack in the foundation of our relationship. And I felt very much unloved, because I thought, why, if he loves me, why would he do that? And I kind of grew up with an orphan mentality. I was fatherless. And my mother, when I was about a preschooler, 4 or 5 years old, was taken to a mental hospital because she had an emotional breakdown because their marriage was so unhappy. And as a little preschooler, my heart didn't understand that she went there to get better. My heart was saying, "You've left me. You've abandoned me. Where did you go?" And I think the whole family was so shaken by what has happened, they really didn't take the time to explain to me. And for me and my mum's relationship, that was exactly the same. Just orphaned and abandoned is how I kind of felt. And they tried their best, because they were just two broken people themselves. And the church I grew up in the Dutch Reformed Church, and I'll never forget Morris's facial expression when we came through the doors for the first time, and he greeted us and like, "Where are you from?" And we talked a little bit, and I said, "I grew up in the Dutch Reformed Church," and he just smiled, and he's like, "Oh, you're in for a surprise." And I was surprised. I will just leave it at that. But it was awesome, like I said before. I was so blessed to grow up in the church because there's not a story in the Bible I haven't heard. Except for the one of the guy who cut his concubine up into 10 pieces. We didn't learn that one in Sunday school. But it was just a great foundation for my life, and I was always able to go back to the Bible and back to the fundamentals that the church taught. And they were really good at teaching us the fear of the Lord and the awe and the wonder of God. Because when I say the fear of the Lord, I don't mean that we're afraid of God. Like, I'm afraid of the dentist. I went there last time, it was bad news. It cost a lot of money, it was painful. That's not the kind of fear we have for God, because the Bible is very clear that God hasn't given us a spirit of fear, but of love and power and a sound mind. So when I say the fear of the Lord, I mean putting God in the highest place, because He is sovereign over us. He's worthy of our praise. He's holy. That is what it means to fear Him. And we're concerned about what He says about us. We don't want to sin because that hurts Him. That is the fear of the Lord. So it's quite different being afraid. But the church did a very good job at the fear of the Lord and reverence and awe. And so I didn't really understand the grace of God. I didn't know how to come to the heart of a father, because I grew up as an orphan, and the church only showed me God's holy side, didn't show me His grace. But we're supposed to come to His throne of grace and boldness, like Hebrews 4, verse 16. It says, "Therefore, come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in a time of need." And I had a time of need. And like where I knew I was a sinner. That was for certain something that I did know. But the Bible also says where sin is, grace abounds the more. And it was God's will that I come not only to His holiness, but also to His grace. And I really only discovered it here, over there on the floor one day, when I had some prayer, and it was like I could see my life as this beautiful glass ornament. And I could see Jesus standing there, and I knew He wanted me to give it to Him. He didn't say anything, He was just quiet. And as I gave it to Him, it fell and it broke. And there was all these pieces of my life just scattered, all my pain, everything I've done wrong in my life, every doubt, every fear was just there, bare before Him. And I knew He wanted me to say, "Have it all, there you go." But I was so embarrassed because I knew He was holy. And I didn't want His holy eyes to look at who I really was. So I just kind of gathered it all in because I did not have a concept of His grace over my life. Now, when we look at the story of Job, it's one of my favorite stories, but it's also one of my least favorite stories because it really is a book about suffering. And in the story of Job, we really see God's sovereignty and we see His grace. It's just such a beautiful, intertwined story of God being supreme, but God being gracious. Because God could have left Job alone, but He didn't. Somewhere in Psalms, I didn't write that one down, but it says that God tests the righteous, but the wicked person He leaves alone. So if you're going through some testing in your life, know that God's eyes are on you, because His eyes are on the righteous. I love what James says about Job in James 5:11. He says, "Indeed we count them blessed who endure. You have heard of the perseverance of Job and seen the end intended by the Lord, that the Lord is very compassionate and merciful." So when God looked at Job's life, He saw the end. He had the end in mind. And when He looks at my life, He saw the end that He had intended for me. And when He looks at your life, He sees the end that He has intended. So Job didn't get the heavenly perspective over his life. When we read the book, we just see him. He's a righteous man. He fears God. He sacrifices when his children, after they had a party, just in case they sinned. So Job was not a person who, he didn't earn suffering. Like, I think if someone does something stupid and they suffer, we can say, yeah, it's because you did that stupid thing. But Job didn't. He was righteous. He loved the Lord. And then we see what happens in heaven. We see all the angels come to present themselves before God, and Satan comes too. And sort of this is like a question I have. What was he even doing there? Why did he come into God's presence? Wasn't he kicked out of heaven? But God speaks to him and he says to him, have you seen my servant Job? He is amazing, he's awesome, and he worships me. And Satan says, yes, he only worships you because you blessed him. Because Job was a very rich man, probably the richest of his lifetime, and he had 7 sons and 3 daughters. But Satan said, if you take away everything he has, he won't worship you anymore. And the question that baffles me most is like God agreeing. It's like, go and do it. Go and take everything he has. So Satan wastes no time. He rushes off. He takes everything Job owns. He kills all his children. But Job still worships God. He says, naked I've come into the world, and naked I'll go out. Blessed be the name of the Lord, the one who gives and takes away. And then Satan goes back up to heaven for a second time. And God says to him, have you seen my servant Job? He still worships me. But Satan says he only worships you because he's healthy. Take his health, touch his skin, and we will see if he worships you then. So, I mean, that's a trial for us all at the moment. There's so much sickness around. And that was definitely a trial for us last week in our house. It was very difficult when, like, I think when I'm sick, it's different. But when my children are sick, it was very hard to go, blessed be the name of the Lord. But Job still worshipped God because he understood God's sovereignty over his life and God's grace over his life. And I think there's something really powerful in our worship. It's easy to worship when things are going fantastic and when things are great, but when things are hard. One of my favorite songs is written by someone whose baby died, and he's just professing his belief in God as someone who raises the dead to life. And there's so much more power in that when you're in the suffering. Because it's easy for me to say God raises the dead. I haven't lost my baby, but so in that suffering time, to worship God is key. All right, so having all that said, who likes chocolate? Oh, there's heaps of people who likes chocolate. All right, who's brave enough to come up here and get the chocolate? Lucas, are you brave enough? Oh, awesome. He's going to come. Oh, sorry, Asher. Sorry, I thought. Oh, he can have it. All right, Asher, you come up here. Lucas is awesome. Thanks, Lucas. Can you come up here, over here? Excellent. You can share with Lucas. Right. Now, in order for this chocolate to become Asher's, I have to hand it over, don't I? As long as I'm standing here holding on to the chocolate, it's mine. It's not his, is it? Okay, and if I give it to him, I have to let go, because he can't take it if I don't. Now, if he gets desperate, I'm not going to let go. But if he gets desperate, he can open the side there and he can nibble some of the blocks. Do you think you can do that? Yeah, he can. But it still will be kind of in my hands, wouldn't it? It's not until I let go and I go, there you go, Asher, you have the chocolate, that it actually becomes his now. And he's going to share. Thank you, Asher. And I was the same with God over my orphan mindset that I grew up with. At times, I let some of it go. I gave some of it to the Lord, and I had lots of healing and deliverance in that area, but there was still a little bit that I was holding on to. And I convinced myself that I wasn't. I was like, no, the past has no more hold on me. And I even I forgot all the hard things that happened because, no, I did let go, but I didn't. I think I had just that residue of that orphan mentality stuck in my heart. And it's like a weed that you have in the garden. If you leave it there for too long, it seeds. And then you think, okay, it's time to pull it out. And you pull it out, all the little seeds just fly, and they land everywhere. And it's kind of hopeless, because when the rain comes and the sun comes, the seeds grow. And now instead of just one, you have like 1,000 thistles. And so when about a year and a half ago, a tragedy struck my life. And that's when those seeds started to grow again. That orphan mentality just came back into my life. Because I felt like I went through a bit of an earthquake. My life was shaken, and I lost a great deal. Like, just, you'd all know about the earthquake, and we were lucky enough to still live in Invercargill. We missed the earthquake, but you all have a really good view of what it looks like when an earthquake happened. And that is what happened to me when this tragedy hit me. I lost not everything, but I lost a great deal, and that left me heartbroken and in great pain. Like, it hurt so much spiritually that I could even feel the pain physically. Sometimes my heart would just ache so much. And those seeds of being orphaned just grew in my life, and I went back to that place of, I'm alone. I better watch out for myself because no one will. Like, if God really knew how much it would hurt me when He takes it away, why did He give it to me in the first place? You know, orphan has no identity. You have no one to care for you. And that's exactly kind of where I went back to that place of, no one cares. I have to look after myself. And if I'm not going to hold on to the Lord, He won't hold on to me. And in that place of desperation, I said to Hannes, right, take me shopping. We're going to do retail therapy. Buy me a cross necklace, because I want to hold on to the cross and be reminded of that just all the time. And it's a good thing to be reminded of the cross, but not in your own strength like I was. And so last worship Sunday, Greg had this word about baptism. And just exactly like that verse in Romans said, we are buried with Jesus, but we raised to life with Him again. And so if you have anything in your life that just really needs to die, come over and just leave it here on the baptismal pool. And Lynn's laughing because she knew what happened. And in my mind, I was just thinking, this recent tragedy, the recent pain that I have, Lord, I can't live with it anymore. You need to come and be sovereign over that pain and show me your grace. I didn't really have the past in mind, because for me it was just the recent. I just wanted the recent pain to go. And I felt the Lord said, it's time to take that necklace off. It's time to take off what it represents to you. Like, not take the cross off your life, but just take the self that I've put on it. And so it took me some time to do that. I took it off. And I just came to the front and knelt down. And Greg came and prayed for me. And his word was, there's like a darkness in your life that comes upon you at times. And it comes from your past. Because God saw further. He had the end in mind for me. I only saw the recent pain. But God saw the pain that I felt as a little girl when I was 4 years old. And then all of that time. And He knew I was holding on to it. He saw that I was like clinging to that chocolate just with I should not have clung to. And He saw the seeds that was taken root in my heart. And He could heal the recent pain, but that's not the root of the problem. It's not going to help. The next tragedy, I will just think again, oh my goodness, I'm an orphan, nobody loves me. So He went deeper, and He delivered me from an orphan mindset and healed my heart again. And I love what He says in John 14 verse 18 when Jesus is about to go to heaven, and sort of this is his preparing his disciples for his departure. And he says to them, I will not leave you orphans. I will come to you. And so that's exactly what he did. He didn't leave me as an orphan. He came to me because he was sovereign over my life, but he was also gracious. In Isaiah 62, verse 4, it says, you shall no longer be termed forsaken, nor shall your land anymore be termed desolate. Because before my name was forsaken, and I was desolate. But you shall be called Hephzibah, and your land Beulah, for the Lord delights in you, and your land shall be married. So Hephzibah means the Lord delights in you, and Beulah means that your land shall be married. So the Lord changed my name. He changed my name from forsaken to my delight is in you, and from desolate to you shall be married. I think I will end on that note. No longer are you termed forsaken. You are the delight of the Lord. And I was thinking about this morning. You didn't come here to hear me speak this morning. Some of you expected Greg to speak. Barbara was greatly surprised. But you didn't come to see Greg or Ian or me. You came here to see Jesus. You came here for a revelation from him. So whatever it is you carried, I carried being an orphan, but I'm sure there are other things that you carry. So whatever you have come for this morning, come. Come for, because he's sovereign over your life, and he has the end in mind for you. So if you need to meet him as the sovereign holy king, come and meet him that way. But if you need to come and meet his grace, because it's gracious as well, come and just lay it all down before him. So if Esther could come back up, maybe I should have said that before. And if you've never given your life to him, then come and just surrender it all. And if you're sick, if you need prayer,